Last week, we started looking at the introduction to VB.NET with emphasis on home. Yeah, started looking at VB.NET. And then main focus was the program structure. Okay, so we saw practical code, or we wrote a code to print out we came up with a code, looked at the program structure. Okay, so I want us to just do a quick recap of that. Then we'll move to, we'll look at other programs quickly, and then we'll move to the control structures. Okay. All right, so I'll switch to, or let me just go through the program structure again. Then we'll go to the IDE and then practice some of the code. Yeah. By the way, I hope you can all see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we talked about the fact that VB is an object-oriented, event-driven programming language. And we said VB.NET runs on the .NET framework, okay, which helps you to run or launch your programs or your applications on the Windows platform. Okay. Then we looked at the various versions of .NET framework. We talked about the IDE that we will be using. Okay. And then we went further to look at the program structure. So on the program structure, we talked about the various parts, okay, that we can see in every VB.NET program. Okay, so the structure of every VB.NET program. So we say VB.NET program has the namespace declaration. It has it has a class or a model. It has one or more procedures. It has variables. There's the main procedure. We said a procedure is a function or a method. Okay, like we can see in other programming languages, Java and C++. Then there's the main procedure, which is like the main method. And we know that with a main method, that is where you execute or you run your application. Then we have the statements and the expressions. Okay. And then another component or is the comments. Okay. So we looked at this particular code, okay, which I'll demonstrate again, go through again, and then we can look at other things. Okay. So it says there are various parts of the program above, the various part of the program above. The first line is the import system, which is used to include the namespace in the program. Then the next line, you have the model declaration. It's completely object-oriented. So every program must contain a model of a class that contains data and procedures that your program uses. Now, the model of the class generally contain more than one procedure. Okay, the procedures contain executable code. In other words, they define the behavior of the class. Okay, so these are things that we've learned already regarding object-oriented programming. Okay. Now, a procedure could be of any of the following. It could be a function. It could be a sub. Okay, so last week I told you the difference between the sub and the function. So with a function, there's always a return value. So you write a function, at the end of the function, you return something. There's a return value. Okay, but with the subs or with the sub, there is no return value. Okay, so when you write your sub, you don't add a return value to it. So that's the difference between the two. Then we have the operators, which are also used or come in a form of procedure. We have the get procedure, we have the set procedure, we have the add handler, remove handler, and then raise event. Okay, so some of these we'll see them when we go further in the course. Okay. Now the next part of the program, which says this program is a comment. Okay, and we know that comments are there to help you understand what the code is about or what the code is doing, and also to tell you who owns the code and all that. So we know that the comments are ignored by the compiler during the process of compilation. And then we have the next procedure, sorry, the main procedure, okay, and so on. And now some basic syntax, or let's just go through the code again, and then we look at some basic syntax. Okay. All right, so can you see my screen with the IDE? Hello, can you see my screen with the IDE?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So we'll create a project and you choose new project. Okay. And like I said last week, with the Visual Studio platform, not Visual Studio Code, with Visual Studio, okay, the IDE, anytime you are creating a project, you make sure you are selecting Visual Basic because there are other options, there are other programming languages there. Okay, so you make sure the first thing you select is Visual Basic. Then even with that, you make sure you are selecting the platform on which you want to develop your application. So in our case, we are doing a Windows application. So I select Windows. And then we start with the console application. So if you go through the various options we have here, you can see console application with Visual Basic. Okay. Then also the .NET framework. I think last week I talked about it. So you make sure you select one and at the level with which your application should be able to run when you are using it on your Windows operating system. Okay. So we'll give it a name. So let's say sample console app. Okay. And then we create the project. So when you create your project, by default, you have this interface with your model. Okay, so we can see the name here as model.vb. Okay. your interface has a toolbar. We'll use more of the toolbar when we get to developing applications with the Windows form. We have the names, the model, okay, model 1, with which you can change the name, or it's an identifier, so you can always change the name based on what you are doing. But by default, when you create your project, it gives you this structure. Okay. Now, when you start a model, you end it. So you can see it here. Then we have the sub main, which is your main procedure. Okay, so this is where you execute your code. Okay, so we're going to add a comment, and we said when you want to add a comment, you start by using your single quotes. So you just put this is a VB.NET program. Okay. So what we have here is a comment. Then we come to our main. So in the main, we are going to write a program to execute something. So for instance, we want to display maybe your name. Okay, want to display maybe your name. So you use the keyword console. Okay, because you are working with the console application, console.writeLine. Okay, so there's .write and .writeLine. Okay, just like we have in Java, system.out.print and .println, which we know for the print. We know that with the print, it will print a statement on one line, all on one line, but with the print line, it prints and it moves to the next line, or gives moves to the next line to be able to print again. Okay, so okay, so here we are going to put in a statement that we want to print, okay, or the string that we want to print. So for instance, you want to display your name. Okay. For instance, you want to display your name. So we put it, because a string, we use the double quote. And then you just type your name there. Okay. Now with VB.NET, there's nothing like you terminating with a semicolon. Okay, there's nothing like the semicolon. And whatever model or class or your if-else statement that you start, you should always end. Okay, so we don't need to terminate it. So with this, I'll run my code. And when I run my code, something happened. The interface just pops up and disappears. Okay, so in order to make your console static, okay, pop up so that you can see the output, you use the console.read key. Console.read. Okay, now there's console.read, there's console.read key, there's console.read line. So the read is used to, it says here that the next character, or it's used to read, okay, or accept input. Okay, so it reads the next character from the input stream. That's what the read does. Just like we know with the scanner in Java and then the cin in C++. Okay, so in VB.NET, the read accepts input. Then we have the read key. Now the read key obtains a character from the key when pressed by the user. Okay, and then it helps to display the console window. Okay, so anytime you use the read key, okay, helps to display the console window. So without it, the console window will just pop up and disappear. Okay? And then we have the read line, just like the print and the print line, the write and the write line. It reads a character, okay, or it accepts input characters. Okay. So in this case, we are going to use the read key so that we can have our console pop up, okay, and display our output. So I run my code, and then this time around, the console is showing the output. Okay. So this is how you display, write a program to display with VB.NET. Okay. So it's actually a simple programming language to learn once you know the basics, the basic elements and features of programming, okay, which we've already done. Implementing whatever you know in the other programming languages in VB.NET is relatively simple. Okay. All right. Any question? Any question? So as you can see, this simple program has the basic program structure that we talked about. Okay, the program structure that we talked about. Okay. All right, so let's move on. Okay. All right, so basic syntax. Okay, we have identifiers. Identifiers, we said they are names used to define a class, variable, or function. We know how to write identifiers. There are rules that you must follow when you are writing your identifiers. You don't start with a number or a digit. Then if you are using symbols, the only symbol you can use is an underscore. Okay, all that has been said here. You do not use reserved words. Okay, now we have some list of reserved words in VB.NET over here. So add handler, boolean, okay, declare, double, default, delegate, so on. All the keywords in VB.NET. All right, so data types. Data types. So in VB.NET, data types are used to define the type of variable or function in a program. Okay. Now, furthermore, conversion of one data type to another using the conversion function. So you can convert one data type to another using the conversion function. Now, how do you declare your data type, okay, or you declare your variable? You do that by using the dim keyword. Okay, dim keyword. Dim here means dimension. Dim, then you specify your variable name, then as, then you define your data type. Okay, so with the data types, they are in this form. So when it comes to Boolean, this time you don't write bool, but you write the full word Boolean. Okay. When you come to other data types, there's bytes, there's char, there's date, there's decimal. Okay, so there's nothing like float. Okay. There's decimal, then there's double, there's integer. So this time you don't write int, but you write the full word integer. Okay, there are data types like objects, S bytes, short, string, U integer, and so on. Okay, that's the unsigned integer, and so on. Okay, so that's the data types. So let's look at this example over here in our, let's write it on our application on our IDE. Okay. All right. So let's create a new project. So we give this project a name, let's say data types. To make sure the VB.NET Windows and also console application is selected. And then you click to build your application. All right, so in this application, we are going to see how we can define data types. So we are defining the data types to the variables. Okay. So we said to define the data types, you use the keyword dim. Okay. So dim, the dim statement. Now the good thing is when you press it or when you type it, it gives you a description. So it said it declares and allocates storage space for one or more variables. Okay, so that means you can do it for multiple variables. Okay, or you can do it for one variable. So you say dim, let's say number, where the variable name is number. Then as what? As what data type? Number, we dim it as integer. So you type the word integer there in full. Okay, so we dim number as integer. Then let's say dim, say salary as, we dim salary as, let's say double or decimal. Okay, so as decimal. Then we can add maybe date. So we can say dim get date. Get date as, then we put the date. Okay, so date, there's date and time and so on. So those options are there. And then let's do the last one, string. So let's say dim name as string. Okay, so this is how you declare or define your variables with their data types. Are we all here?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, so you just do your dim, your variable,
Yes, sir.
and then as, then you specify the data type. Okay. Now you can also go ahead and initialize it by specifying the value. So in this case, we can dim number as, or instead of number, let me just do it age. Age. Dim age as 24. Then you can also do the other way of initializing, where in this case, we specify the variable we declared, which is salary. And you can say salary is equal to, let's say, 10,500.00. Okay. Then what else can we do? We set date. So we can say get date is equal to, so let's say today. So it should give us today's date. And then, like I said, we can also use so we are looking at how to enter inputs. Okay, the first one, you can do it this way by initializing it whilst you are declaring your variable. You can also initialize it in this form after you declare the variable. And then you can also prompt the person to enter the input. Okay, to enter the input. To enter the input. So with that one, we said we use the read. We use the read line, okay, or the read console.read line or read. So dim name. Okay, so we say name equals. So if you want the person to enter the name, you just use console dot read line. Okay, console dot read line. Well, when we do it this way, we now expect the person to enter his or her name. So we are expecting the read line function to now accept input, okay, into your system. Please, are we all here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So we use the read line to accept the input. Okay. All right, so let's perform the output of this particular example. So we can use the console.write line. Console.write line. And then we put so I'll copy this because we'll be doing a lot of write lines. Okay. And I'll say, welcome to the VB.NET class. And maybe I can say, please enter your name. Okay, so let me just bring this part in here. So please enter your name, then use the read name. Name equals console.read line. Then after the person has entered the name, we want to output the name. So to output the name, we say I am So we close the string. Okay. Now we want to pick the name that is entered. Okay. The name that has been entered. We want to accept that name into the output. So we do that by indicating your using the using what we call the placeholder. Okay, so we use the placeholder, which comes in the form of the double or the open and close curly brackets with 0 in it. Okay, now in I think Java, we're using the and symbol, if I remember, okay, to specify the placeholder. So what we have done here, this value here, okay, is a placeholder which is used to read values, okay, into your to read strings or values into your output. So what we've done here, then we specify the value we want to read, which in this case is the name. Okay, so the name we show here. So because of this, we can now read whatever name that has been entered. Then it will give us the output. I am. Okay. Then the name pops up. Whatever name you type pops up. Okay. So now let's enter the age. So the age, we can say I am. So we do the same thing. Our curly bracket with 0 in there. And then comma. We add the age. Then we specify, let me just copy and paste. We specify the date. Okay. So let's say I was born so today's date, or we use the date, the get date. Okay. And then the next one, we specify, let's say, what's the next thing there? The salary. So let's say I earn so here we put here salary. Please, are we following?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So finally, we end with the console dot. If anyone has a question, you can raise your hand and ask. Console dot read key. So this is our code. And so we started by first defining our variables, which is what we seek to do here. So the age as integer, salary as decimal, get date as date, and then name as string. Okay. All right, so there are some hands up. Raymond.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
My question is, I realize the various data types, the input that you have written. I
Yes.
realized when it came to the output side, you had to do them individually. Like, is there any way you can put all of them under one line? That
Yes,
will
there's a
generate
way of doing that. Okay, but I want to show you the individual one first. Then we will
and
look
then
at
the
that.
placeholder.
Yes, we'll look
And
at
the
that.
placeholder. Last one, the
Yes,
placeholder.
yes.
Yeah, the integers of one, I understand when it is zero, I don't have any problem. But when it is a string, and then it has to be zero, that's why it's like I'm lost a bit.
No, it's
Or
it's a default. It's a default value. So whether it's a string, it's a number, whatever it is, anytime you want to pick that value from the program,
okay,
okay, you just use this.
okay.
So if you look at, I think, Java or C++, we use ampersand or something. I don't quite remember. Okay, we use them as placeholders in the code to pick the value or the inputs into the output. Okay, yeah.
You can't
Sir.
decide to use any other thing.
Pardon?
You can't decide to use any other thing.
Any other thing like what?
Let's say, intentionally maybe put some default numbers instead of zero. So, I'm just thinking aloud.
Yeah, we'll come to that.
Okay.
We'll talk about that. Yeah. Samuel, is it?
Sir.
Samuel, your
No,
hand.
this
Yes, sir.
no this is
Emmanuel, just raise your hand so that we'll call you. So Samuel's hand was already up. So just raise your hand and then we allow you to ask your question. Yes, Samuel, let's go.
I was asking if Visual Basic.NET, the naming of variables follows the camel casing principle or camel casing rule.
What's the camel casing principle? Can you tell us?
Like naming of variables, as in you use the camel casing for naming of variables, small letter first, and then I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yes, it follows that rule, but even without that, it still works. Okay, so you want to start your naming convention with a small letter. Okay, in programming, it's always the best approach to naming your variable. Okay, so the camel case naming convention is always the best, where you can even put your variables together. So for instance, in this case, the get date, we can just use get and date together like this, and it still works. Are we all here?
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Yes, Emmanuel.
sir, please, you made mention of the integer, the first one that you started. You made mention of we should write everything, like as in or like integer. So what if we write just int?
To give you an error.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So with
Thank you.
VB.NET, that is how the data types are written.
Okay.
All right. So let's run this application and see our output. So we run it. Welcome to VB.NET class. Then we have the plus. And it says, please enter your name. So we put the name equals console.read here. So now it's expecting us to enter the name. So I enter my name. I press enter. After entering the name, then it prints out the values in that order. So then the name pops up because of the placeholder we have here. Then I am 24. Okay. So we can even add the years to it. Okay. Then I was born. So in this case, we use what? Today's date. So you can see the value is giving us. It's giving us the date. Now this date is picked based on the system date and then gives us the time, by default 12 a.m. Okay. Now you can also use the setting, the date and time, which is also there as a setting. Then the amount and also is displayed here. Okay. All right. So this is to introduce you to the data types, how to write variables, and performing initialization, and also your inputs and outputs. Okay. I hope that is clear.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. So at this level, you should know how to perform your basic inputs and your outputs. Okay. All right. So I think Raymond asked the question about having your output all on one line, okay, rather than separating it. Okay, so let me just use this same example to demonstrate that. All right, so to display all our values, okay, so maybe we want to have the name, the age, the date, and all maybe on one line. Okay, just to output them on one line. Okay, we can use the write, okay, the console.write. Okay, that is a much basic way of displaying your VB code, okay, on one line. Then there's also the way of using the placeholders, okay, to display your output on one line. All right, so let me just edit this one. Let me do that for the age and the date. So the age and the name. So as you can see here, it says I am, okay, and so let me put here years old. Now, this I am is supposed to take the name. So I am, the name comes and and so years old, maybe 24 years old. And now, your first placeholder here, or the first placeholder we have here, okay, is going to take that of the name. Okay. Then the second placeholder, we separate it with a comma, and then we put age here. Okay. So the age is supposed to come here. However, when it comes to the second placeholder, you use the value 1. Okay, we use the value 1 for the second placeholder. If you have a third value you want to output, we use, it continues in that order. So you have 2, 3 in that order. But because name is the first value we want to output, we use the curly bracket 0. The second thing we want to output is age. So we use the placeholder of 1. Okay. So when we run our code, it prompts us to enter the name. We enter the name. Okay. And then it gives us the output in that form. Okay. So the name comes, I am, and then whatever name you entered. So the placeholder 0 is going to pick the first value you want to output, which in this case is our name. Then end placeholder 1 comes, which is for the second value. Okay, so just like we learned from arrays, where we say the indexing starts from 0. Okay, so this also uses that same concept with the placeholders, depending on the number of values you want to enter. So if you want to increase it to, let's say, add the dates to it. Okay, so maybe we want to add the date to it. So I was born on, then we introduce the curly bracket, add, no, so this will be 2. Okay, and then we put here get date. And then I'll take this out. So the first placeholder with 0 is going for the name. The second one with value 1 is going for the age. The third one with value 2 is going for the date. Okay, so when you run and you enter the date, you enter the name. Okay, so it gives us, I am this 24 years old. I was born on, okay, so it gives you the date and so on. Please, are we following?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, Raymond,
Yes, sir, we are following.
question has been answered.
Sure.
Okay, all right. Then Samuel, your hand is up.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, I was just asking if what you are doing is the same as the formatted strings in Java.
What are formatted strings?
Oh, okay.
What are formatted strings?
Sir,
Yes.
it's like replacing it's just like what you are doing, like you replace the variables with I think the percentage sign. They have each value for each variable.
Yeah. So it works best when you are doing yes, it does the same in Java, but so maybe if you want to output, let's say, a name, then use %s. So where the name is a string, it's %s. If you want to output maybe a floating point number, you use %f. Okay, it does the same thing in Java. It does the same in C programming, in MATLAB, and so on. Okay. Yeah, so it's the same concept. So this time, instead of the percentage or maybe the and symbol, you use the curly bracket, but the values inside the curly bracket changes from 0 to 1 and increasing depending on the strings that you want to format or you want to output. All right. So let's go back to our handout. So I've explained most of the concepts, so I'll just go through the handout quickly. So there's type conversion. So if you want to convert your type from maybe a character to an integer, okay, and so on, you have the various type conversion functions here, which you can use to do that. Okay, so there's an example here on the time conversion and type conversion and how it works. Okay, so I'll skip them. Then we have variables and constants. We know what variables are, we know what constants are. We've seen how you declare your variable, the use of the keyword dim, okay, can be used for classes, variables, models, structure, sub, other procedures. Okay. Now you can also declare more than one variable at a time. Okay, more than one variable at a time. So for instance, if I go back to the code, I can do dim dim salary. Sorry, close this first. Okay, so I'll separate this with a comma and have this declared here. So you can have it done this way as well. Okay, have all your declaration on one line, but you're separating them with a comma. Okay, irrespective of the data type that you are using. Okay, and similarly, if you are using the same data type too, you can also separate it with a comma in your declaration. Okay. All right. And then you initialize it by assigning a value to it, okay, which we've also looked at. Okay. Then a few examples here on the initialization, okay, which we just discussed. Then the use of the read line to accept input, which we've also seen. Okay, so we've used one example to explain all those concepts. So enter your name, you use the read console.read line to accept the name, okay, which we've also looked at. Okay. Then in VB.NET, expressions can be written in two ways. There's the left value and the R value, the right value. Okay, so there is dim x as integer. Okay, so 10 equals x. Then there's also dim x as integer, x equals 10. Okay, which all works with VB.NET. Now, with constants, to make a value a constant value, we use the keyword const. Okay, it's used to declare a variable constant. And that can be done within the model, your class, your structure, your procedure, and so on. Okay. So there's an example here. So you can see here, dim int data. Okay, sorry, const. Okay, so const or constant int data as 24. Okay, now what it's saying is that the value, or sorry, 20, the value 20 should be a constant value. Okay, the same as name here, ATUCPS, topic VB.NET. Okay, then pi, so we know pi as always a constant value. So we dim also pi as this. Now when we go further, we use that to what? Calculate the radius of the, or the area of the circle, given the radius, okay, and the area being declared as integer. So you can see another way in which, from the example I said, you can declare your radius. You can declare two variables of the same type in this form. Okay. All right, so there are three main types of declaration, okay, of variables. This also cuts across other programming languages. So we have the procedure scope, there is the model scope, and then there's the public scope. Okay. Now the scope of a variable determines the accessible range of a defined variable at the time of declaration in any block or model or class. So you can access it if the variable is in a particular region or scope in the same block. Okay. So for instance, there is the procedure scope, or what is also known as the local scope or local declaration of variable. So with the local scope or local declaration of variable, your variable is declared inside the procedure or the function block. Okay, so the example that we've seen so far, where we've declared our variables inside the submain, is called the local or the procedure scope. Okay, we've declared it in here. Okay. Then we have the model scope. So with the model scope, it says all existing procedures can easily identify a variable that is declared inside the model sheet. Okay, so with that particular one, it says one more thing about the model level variable is that these variables can remain existence as long as the model is executed. Okay, so there are two ways you can deem it private. So that's the private level, and then the non-private. Okay, so you can do your normal declaration. However, these are accessible to all the procedures within your model. Okay. So a typical example is when we declare maybe integer outside the submain. Okay, so other procedures can use it, or we can also make it private when we are performing some object-oriented programming principles or concepts, like maybe inheritance, okay, and so on. Then finally, we have the public scope, or what we call the global declaration. Okay, so it's a global variable is a variable that is used to access variables globally in a program. It means this variable can be accessed in all procedures or model available in the program. Okay, so this is a higher level than the model. Okay, in this case, it is declared within the naming space or the namespace. So it's known as the namespace scope. Okay, so usually it is declared within the namespace. You can also do those declaration, okay, in the model as well, but they work or they are accessible globally. Okay, they are accessible globally. So we use the public keyword to access those variables or those global variables. Okay. All right. Then we have operators. Now operators, as we know, are used to perform various operations on variables or operands. Okay. In VB.NET, we have the arithmetic operators, the comparison operators, logical and bitwise operators. There's the bit shift operators, assignment operators, concatenation operators, and there are other miscellaneous operators. Okay, so with the arithmetic operators, we have the caret symbol, which is used to indicate exponentiation or a value raised to the power of another. We have the addition, subtraction, multiplication. Now there are two types of division in VB.NET. There is the /, which performs the normal division. So it's used to divide one operand by the other. Okay, and it returns a floating point value. Take note of that. A floating point value. Okay, then the one which is the / is called the integer division operator. Okay, however, this particular one returns an integer value. Please, are we all here?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Okay, so in VB.NET, two types of division operators. The / returning a floating point value, and then the / division returns an integer value. Okay, so whether the operands you are using are decimal values, anytime you use the / in your division, like we can see here, whether your X and Y are decimal value, it will still give you an integer by ignoring the values that will come after the decimal point. Okay. Then the last of the arithmetic operators is the mode. Okay, mode. So mode for modulus operation, which returns the remainder. Okay. Now the operator precedence and associativity works here in the sense that after your brackets, the highest level of operator precedence after the brackets is the caret. Okay, so exponentiation, BODMAS, the order. Okay, caret. Then multiplication, division, and mode. Okay, the mode are the next after the caret. They have the same precedence, multiplication, division, and modulus. Okay, then those three are followed by the addition and subtraction. So anytime you have an expression, bracket first, followed by the carat exponentiation, followed by multiplication, division, and mode, then that is preceded, or that is that precedes the addition and subtraction. Now, addition and subtraction are of the same precedence. Okay, so we take note of that. Then we have the comparison operators. So comparison operators, we have the equal to, okay, which in this case is this. So when you say A equals B, this comparison operators will always return a Boolean value, which is either true or false. Okay, so if A is 2 and B is 4, and you do A equals B, this will give you false. Okay, unlike in Java and C++, where we do the double equal to. Okay, this time you do it a single equal to, just like the assignment. Okay, then this is not equal to. So not equality. Okay, so unlike in Java and C++, where we do the exclamation, which is the not before the equal to, this time around, it uses the greater and the less than sign as not equality. Then we have greater than, we have less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. And then we have the is operator. The is operator is used for objects. Okay, it's used for objects. Used to determine whether an object referred to is a valid object. Okay, then it's not also used for objects. So if it's not valid, returns true. Okay, otherwise it returns false. Then there's the like. The like is used to check a pattern expression of variable. Okay, which also is written in this. So results equals string like pattern. So it will check the pattern. Then we have the bitwise and logical operators. So the and, or, not. So you write them in this way. So A and B. So instead of the double ampersand for the and, we do it A and B. And then the not, or the not, we use the not A. Okay, the word not. Then the or, we write the word or. Okay, so if we go back to the key words, you can see those words in there. There's or here, there's not here. These are all keywords. There's is here. There's which other word did we look at? There's and. Okay, there's and also here. Okay. So even though they are operators, they are also keywords. Okay. Then is false. It's used to determine whether an expression is false. Okay. So if the expression is false, yes, it will give you true. Yes, the expression is false. If you use the is true operator on an expression and the expression is true, it will give you true. Okay. So those are the, then we have the bit shift operators. Okay. Now the bit shift operators are different from the bitwise and logical operators. Okay, so the bit shift operators are known as the binary AND operators. Binary AND. Okay, now this is how the binary AND operators work. So let me just go to the whiteboard and demonstrate this. Okay, I hope you can all see the board. I hope you can all see the board.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Please don't write on it.
Yes, sir.
Don't write on it. So we have 3. Okay, so let's say you have the value 3. And so this is we are talking about the bit shift. Bit shift operators. So we have 3 and 4. Okay. Now the bit shift operator, if you want to find for 3 and 4, will not give us false or true. Please don't write on the screen. Will not give us false or true. Rather, the bit shift is looking at binary value. So what's going to happen is that first, this value of 3 will be converted to a binary form. Okay, so what's the binary of 3? Can anyone help us? Zero, 1, 1, right? Is that it? What's the binary value of 3?
0011.
Okay, so 0, 1, 1. So that's 2 raised to the power 0, 2 raised to the power 1, 2 raised to the power 2, 2 raised to the power 3. So 2 raised to the power 0 is 1, 2 raised to the power 1 is 2, 2 raised to the power 3. Sorry, 2 raised to the power 2 is 4, and then 2 raised to the power 3 will give us 8. Okay, so if we want 3 will be when 2 and 1 are on. So we have 1, 1, and then 0. Okay, if you want the binary of 5, that means 4 and 1. So 1 will be on, 2, we don't need 2, so 2 will be off, and then 4 will be on, so 1, 0, 1. This is for 5, this is for 3. Okay, so we are doing 3 and 5. So we have that of 3, the binary of the binary of 5 is also given. Okay. So now, if we are using our AND on them, what do we do? Okay, I'm sure you've learned all this in you learned these things in level 100. Okay, so using the AND gate, 1 and 1 will give us what? True and true will give us what? Using the AND. Anyone?
True.
Will give us
True.
So we'll have 1 here. Okay. Then true and false. 0, anytime there's 0 is false. So 1 and 0
False.
give us what?
False.
False. 0. Okay. Then 1 and 1, sorry, 0 and 1 also give us false.
False.
Okay. So this will be our value for when we use the bit shift operator. So when you do 3 and 5, you are going to get 0, 0, 1. Okay, so that's how the bit shift operator works, which is different from the bitwise and logical operators, because in this case, it's working with binary values. So whatever number is given, that number is converted into a binary form. Then the AND or the OR operator acts on it to give you the result. Okay. All right, so let's go back to Any questions? Then we have the assignment operator. So we know the assignment operator plus equals. That means anytime you do plus equals, so for instance, in this case, x plus equals 5 is the same as you saying x is equal to x plus 5. Same for multiplication, division, okay, the caret, and so on. Then the and, okay. Now the and here is for concatenation. Concatenation means you are putting two strings together. So star and equals name is the same as you saying star or string, sorry, equals string plus name. Okay. Yes, Prince Asari, your hand is up.
So the other binary operator, the other one, before the shifted one, I did not get it correct.
Which
My
one?
data was the other binary before you change to the shifted one, the shifted binary. I did not get it. My data was in there.
So with the bit shift operator, we are saying that whatever number you are supposed to use your and or your or on, okay, whatever operand in the form of a number, a decimal number, those numbers are converted into binary before you use your and or on each of them. Okay, so when the video is posted, you can always go back and watch this part of the video so that you get the understanding of it. Okay.
Okay.
Then we have the concatenation. So there are two forms of concatenation. There's the and then there's the plus. Okay, so the ampersand symbol is used to bind two or more operands. As we can see here, okay, but we use the plus for that more, okay, so that you don't get confused when you see the plus. That can also be used for concatenation, okay. And then we have other miscellaneous operators. Okay, we have the wait, address of, get type, if, and so on. Okay, so operator precedence, what I talked about. So first, the weights, the brackets are of higher precedence. Then we have exponentiation, the caret. Okay, then we have the unary operators. Please, this is different from the binary addition and subtraction. The unary operators are like you saying -1, -2, and so on. It's considered as a unary operator. Okay, so the negation. Then we have the binary, sorry, we have the multiplication, the floating point multiplication, the integer, the modulus, the subtraction and addition, the bit shift operators in that order. Okay. All right, so there are some examples here. Okay, this on the bit shift. Okay. A whole lot of them. But let's pick one and then try. Then we can end the class for today. Maybe I'll use just one example to explain all the other things we've talked about. Then next week, I think next week we'll be meeting face to face, right? I'm told that
Yes, sir.
exams will end tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
So next week, when we meet face to face, we'll start from the control structures. Okay. So let's look at an example. There are a whole lot of examples here. We'll just pick one and demonstrate some of the things we've discussed under operators. So create a new project, save the old one. Select the code, the programming language, the Windows, and then we name it. Let's name this operators. So with our first example, we want to demonstrate I think we talked about the division and the integer division and then the floating point division. Okay. So let's declare two variables. Let's say dim A and B as float, sorry, as decimal or as double. And then let's say A equals 2.4. Then B equals 1.2. Okay. So let's say using of the forward slash. So we said the forward slash is the floating point division, forward slash operator. So we want to use that. And then we say C. Okay, so let's declare C as well. We've not done that. Let's declare C as an integer. So C as an integer. So here we say C equals A forward slash B. And then we output, we do our console dot write line. And then we say we say the product is, so anytime we divide, we get a product. A product is, okay. So we use C. I'll copy and paste the same thing. This time we are doing backslash. So the backslash we said is for integer division. So the product of this and this. Are we all here?
Yes, sir.
All right, so let's run this. Oh, sorry, I didn't bring my read key. Console dot read key. So that's giving us two values, the same value. However, like we said, one works with the integer. I think because I declared the C as an integer, that's how come we are getting the value for the first one as integer. So let me just declare, let me use D for double and put here D. All right, then we talked about the bitwise too. So I'll just replace this code with a bitwise example. So let me just take this off. And change the ABC to integer. So I think we did 3 and then 5. And so using the AND using the bit shift, the AND operator. Okay. Operator, that's a bit shift. Bit shift AND operator. So we say C equals A and B. And so we say the bit shift operator is so let's run this. Oh, sorry, console or read key again. So that's giving us a value of 1. Okay, so when we did it, we had 0, 0, 1. Okay. So it's giving us a value of 1, okay, from our example. So let's change the numbers again. Let's say let's say 12 and 9. So 12 and 25. So it's giving us 8. Okay. So let's quickly look at how we are getting that 8. Okay, let's go to the whiteboard. So we had 12 and 25. Okay. Now 12 in binary, what would that give us? So let me just use this to, we have 0, 2 raised to the power 0, 3 raised to the power 1, to the power 2, to the power 4,
1, 2.
to the power 5. So this 1, 2, 4. Oh, to the power 3 didn't come. To the power 3, that will give us 8, 16, and then 24. Okay, so if you want 12, which numbers? So we can get 0, 0, 8. 8 plus 4.
So 1, 1, 0, 0.
So 12 is 1100.
Okay, so 8, 1, 1, and then 0, 0. Okay, so we are going to get 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, and then 0. Then 25 will give us to binary. Sorry, this should be 32. So to binary, that will be what? So 0, 16, 16 plus 8.
1, 1, 0,
1,
1.
1, 1,
0,
0,
1,
0,
1, 0, 1. 0, 0, 1.
0, 0, 1.
1 1
0,
0, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1. Okay. So now we use our AND on it. And what do we get? 0 and 1 will give us 0. 0 and 0 will be 0. 1 and 0, 0. 1 and 1 is 1.
1.
This is also 0. And then 0.
0.
Okay. So when we convert this back to decimal, what do we get? This will be 2 raised to the power 0, which is 2 raised to the power 1, 2 raised to the power 2, 2 raised to the power 3. So the only part that is on is the 2 raised to the power 3, and 2 raised to the power 3 will give us 8. Okay. So if we go back to the code, that's how come we had the answer in the code as 8. Are we all here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's how come we are getting our answer here as 8. Because it's not just doing 12 plus 25, but it's using the bit shift operator where it will convert the values to decimal, sorry, to binary, perform the operation on it, and then give you the answer. Okay, the binary equivalent of that answer. Okay. All right. So that's it for today. Any question? At least today we've covered the basics. So from next week, we are looking at the control structures. We'll look at the if-else statement. This time, instead of switch case, it uses what we call select case. Okay, we'll talk about that as well. Then we'll look at the loops. So the do while loop for next for each loop. Then instead of switch case, VB does what we call the select case. Okay, so we will look at that as well, and the if-else statement. All right, any question from today's class? Any question? Any question? All right, so in the absence